Let me go back to that Kobe quote.
Yeah.
Practice is supposed to be harder than the game. All right, welcome back to the Pure Playbook. Super excited to have Dr. Aaron Ruggieri. Was I really just going to call you honorary doctor?
At this point, I think I'm an honorary doctor.
Well, but you're not. So we are here with the athletic trainer herself, Aaron Ruggieri, who I guess just received an honorary doctorate.
Thank
I'll give it to you.
Thank you.
You've more than earned it.
Thank you.
It's like suits.
Yeah.
Honorary.
Yeah.
I don't want to give that away.
I might.
I'm Dr. Dustin Boston. Super excited to be here with you. We're going to continue to just talk about more things around student athletes and their parents, giving them information and resources.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a time right now with what this is end of February, 2024.
Wild.
And so this week has been a lot of questions from clients, a lot of conversations about spring training, essentially, spring tryouts. So as we've continued to just consecutively every month start to see more and more student athletes in our practice side of things, which is why we're doing this, just more and more questions about everything from how do they lift, what should they be doing, what does tryouts look like, what should they be eating, how do I fuel them? So very fun time as we're getting more questions within our community and outside of our community on how to help with that.
Yeah, I think it's, like you said, a really cool time because a lot of athletes get to play another sport, which we've talked about a lot, that it's important to not just play one thing or specialize in one thing too early, especially in the high school athletes that we see majority of. It's just so important that they play 1, 2, maybe 3 sports outside of their comfort zone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the cross training, and we've talked about this, we talked about this with Ashton. That should be dropping this Friday. Yeah. We've got an awesome guest podcast again. But we talked about the cross training aspect, and not only cross training, but cross sporting, cross competing in different sports. We do have, obviously we've been very open about how many dancers we see right now, but a lot of them do. I found out one of them is super interested in has played lacrosse. My daughter at home likes to play hockey, so that's super fun. But we do have a lot of, we've got football players that are playing baseball now. We've got another football player who's talking about track and throwing, and it always has. So the cross-training aspect is important. So, I mean, that's one of the things right off the bat that we can talk about really is the importance of cross-training, because a lot of times I think the misconception is, and I talked about this on another podcast, on the Crack and Backs podcast with Dr. Terry and Dr. Spencer, that, is cross-training important, or is it more important to really specialize in a specific sport and concentrate on that?
Yeah, I think the thing about cross-training that people don't realize is, yes, like you're doing other activities, it's good for you, whatever. But on the below level, it's just so good for your brain and like anything that's sciencey to build those like neural pathways of those things. So you're preparing your body for so many other instances that you can't really train for whenever you're doing one thing. I know 3 of my dancers play field hockey in the spring. Awesome. And so they go directly from dance season into running and training for that, which they always come back. Those 3 always come back in the summer in so much better shape because they did that. And they bring other things, not just physical things. They bring back team culture and ideas. It's just a fresh outlook on anything that's really good for anyone to do multiple things.
And relationally, to be under the scope of another coach in another program, another set of coaches. It's definitely a different mindset, a different demeanor, a different way of coaching when you do cross sport and when you do have different coaches in general. But it is very important to cross train at the very least, but also cross compete. It not only does it give you the opportunity to stay in shape and get stronger in different ways, but I think more importantly, like you had mentioned, it's also a way to build the relationship side of things as well. And like you said, bring back a different culture, and a different level of expectation, and to be able to do that and stick to something, because the alternative is, here's something that I like to talk about with parents, because parents are stressed to the max, and maybe if they're not stressed, they're super busy.
Yeah.
And so on the parent side, I had somebody else tell me this just the other day, another client. It was just yesterday. And I was like, what's up in your guys' camp? And they're like, what's not up? Basketball, volleyball, soccer?
Yeah.
I was like, good, we'll add another one in there. He's like, no. But parents can also be like, oh, man, I hope they just take a break. Let's just sit this one out. Let's just have know, some family time. But at the same time, too, it's very easy to do that. But we also want what's best if they do want to play. And that's why we find out a lot of their goals. It's like, what is your goal? Where do you want to go? You're 10 years old. Do you see yourself playing in high school? Okay. You're 17 years old. Do you see yourself playing outside of high school at the next level? And so on the parent side of things, I would love to figure out how to like help you guys with the Uber scenario with people you trust and run the kids all over the place. But it's important for us to show up for them, but also allowing them to cross-compete. And literally don't be afraid to ask for help with other friends and families who are doing the same sport that might have a little more availability. It's like, hey, can you take Jake to practice for me? Can you, would you mind? I'm just, I think it's hard for parents to open up and talk about that and ask for that kind of help. But as a parent too, don't forget to show up when you can and explain maybe why you can't, or talk about that schedule accordingly. So then your student athlete doesn't be like, oh, well, they never make my stuff. It's like, well, hang on, bro. One, you chose to add on another sport, and that's okay. But here's what I'm trying to do. Here's where I'm trying to make it. Here's who's going to be picking you up. Here's how I'm going to show up for you if I can't be there right on time. And I think that's a very important thing too, because then as a student athlete, the more we can communicate on that side of things, the better they are going to be in all different aspects of life on, like I just said, communication, but also the understanding and them realizing like, man, this is a lot of time. And if I'm going to put in a lot of time and require a lot of time from my parents, I need to show up, show out, and give 120% every single day. And so I think that's an important dynamic too, as far as the cross training is concerned from a parental standpoint. But also getting them outside their comfort zone, like you said.
Yeah, and I think especially in middle school and high school, when you can try out for really anything, and most of the time there's enough spots where you'll at least make a team. I think it's just a perfect opportunity to go out and try things. I know there's so much data on cross training and playing different sports, and the one that comes to mind is wrestling. Really anyone who wrestles and plays any other kind of sport, they're better. And it's because like wrestling is it kind of gets like frowned upon. I feel like now everyone's like, ooh, wrestling, like you guys are all up on each other, but like wrestling is so good for you. And even women's wrestling is becoming a huge thing. I think dancers all need to wrestle because they would be badasses at it. The fine motor skills, the body control that it teaches any athlete is just unmatched, honestly. I know in my high school, it was wrestling and football. Everyone who was really, really good at football always wrestled. And it's just because you learn different skills that you're not doing every single day, and then you're spending the time in the summer to do as well.
So I quickly pivoted on my last segment because I lost where I was going with that. So hopefully I covered that up well. I was like, oh, where am I going with this? Like you said a lot of good things. That's not where I was going with that. Here's where I was supposed to go with that, and I'm glad you brought it up again, is we can talk about the neurology real quick of – because you had said, the neural pathways they build and doing different dynamic things. And we talked about this with Ashton, so you're going to hear this again, but this is so true, and this is facts. Muscles don't have brains. There is no such thing as muscle memory. Listen to me. I don't know which camera you want me to look at. Listen, Linda. There are no brains in muscles. It is a learned patterned response that you create these neural pathways, and this is how you remember how to do those things. It's like riding a bike. Oh yeah, it's muscle memory. You get on there, it's like, no, it's a learned pathway that you literally grilled into your head. And then there's also a fight or flight and like a survival of the fittest that your body gets into, is once you learn something, you do not forget it. You might not do it as well as you used to. It's like me ice skating again. Boys are playing hockey, it's like, what happens when I got out to the ice on the first time? Well, you probably busted your ass and looked like an idiot.
I missed it.
But I didn't.
I know.
I didn't. But that's that learned motor response and that skill that you gain to where, you are very much more dynamic. Not only are you using different muscles, you're creating like rock solid pathways on top of one another. It's a lattice effect that gives you the best dynamics possible as an athlete.
Yeah, and I think the best example to kind of simplify the neural pathway thing we're talking about is walking. You watch babies, they learn how to walk, and then they don't ever forget. They go from walking to running within a week or two. And that's the reason why whenever someone has an injury or catastrophic thing and they have to learn to walk again, you can learn to walk again because you are just training neural pathways to do those things. And then after that, you don't have to think about it. Your brain every second isn't like, heel toe, heel toe, heel toe. That'd be so exhausting. You just know how to do those kinds of things, and that's why.
Yeah, and that's perfect proof of the fact that muscles don't have brains is because, when people do have an unfortunate situation, whether it's an accident, a slip, a fall, a stroke scenario, and it's like you see these people that have to learn how to walk again.
Right.
And it's proof that muscles don't have brains because they might have all the same muscles, so why can't they still walk?
Right.
Well, your quads, your glutes, your calves, like your plantar fascia, like the plantar muscles in the feet, there's no brains. It's not just being, we've done this before.
Yeah.
It's a learned motor pathway.
I think another reason why the cross-training aspect is so important is the time management. We talk about that a lot with our people that we see in the healthcare side as well, but it gives the athlete more opportunity to learn how to time manage. And it's kind of like you have to you add to the fire and you kind of learn by fire. Yeah, FitFo. FitFo. Josh Knight, if you're listening, there it is. But you have to learn by fire, and the only way to do that sometimes is to throw them into maybe 3 sports.
Yeah.
My boyfriend growing up, his parents, it was 3 sports or nothing.
Yeah.
And so every season it was a new sport, but he can manage his time now, and it worked out. So.
And there is time for there's time for breaks and recovery and things like that. So we're not saying cram their schedules so far packed, but also too, I think there's a culture going on right now to where it's like, I'm just going to concentrate on one thing so I can be the best at that. And I think in a lot of scenarios, especially young, growing up, developing, a lot of these scenarios now, unfortunately, in the culture we live in, is the mindset of, I just want to do what I want when I want to do it, and I want to be able to relax when I want, and I don't want to have a packed schedule so I can just chill at home and scroll TikTok. And it's like, well, hang on a second. So if we're not cross-competing because we're allowing them to have lazy time, find something to do.
Right.
Find another sport, because there's a lot of these athletes that are so good, so gifted. Now, if they're just not in it, it's just like, I'm just not going to go do something just to go do it. If they're not passionate about it, but the clientele, the demographic we're talking about, they are very good. They do want to compete. They do want to grow, but it's just odd how they want to do that, but they also want to have all this time off too. There's plenty of time for time off.
Yeah.
You will get it, because at the end of the day, you've only got so much time to inspire your student athlete, or if you're a student athlete listening, you really only have so much time. There was a handful of athletes ever, your Bo Jacksons, your Jordan tried, but he did it.
Yeah.
Who else? Deion Sanders.
Yeah, Deion.
That played multiple sports all the way through the professional level. So my point being is, at some point in time, you're done.
Yeah.
Like, life after sport is real, and from some sports, it's going to occur faster than other sports you might be great at. But you should never look back and say, man, I could have competed in that.
Yeah.
You have kids and you're like, yeah, I could have played that. I decided not to. And then you're just like, oh man, kind of wish I'd have done that.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than, for you student athletes listening, or for if you parents want a little bit of ammo, there is, and you parents are probably going to feel a little bit, there's really nothing worse than telling some of these stories to your kids and then realizing that you could have done something more in whatever, or you neglected to take advantage of time in another sport, or playing with somebody who's now high profile because you wanted to have time off and kind of be lazy and rest.
Yeah.
There's nothing, then your kids get a little more witty when they're 6 years old and they're like, well, why didn't you keep playing? And it's like, oh God, that's a big kick in the gut.
Yeah, and I think before we move on to whatever we're gonna talk about next,
you're saying this isn't a script.
Never. What are you talking about? But oh man, you lost my train of thought.
Before we switch,
I got it. It was on you talk about rest. I think time off is important, but also so is active recovery and active time off. think that there should ever be a time where you're doing nothing and you're going home after school just sitting on the couch. It's either you're watching film from your whole season and learning how to take that into next season. You're going on walks. It has to be something active. My favorite thing to do is in our seasons off with dance, I obviously they still have things to do, and I give them like, okay, go on a 3-mile walk, but while you're going on this walk, you're listening to this podcast or this book, and you're texting these friends these things, so that there's still engagement and culture being built. Yeah. But you're not doing it in a way that is making you use any physical energy.
Yeah. And so in segueing into that too is the fact that we're getting a lot of questions on, how should they prepare for their tryouts? Yeah. This week.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so maybe for some of these athletes that do double sport, but they've got a long time off right now.
Right.
When's the most important part of the season?
The off season.
The off season. And I think more parents and more student athletes need to know this and hear this more often, because a lot of athletes trying out right now are just now getting back into the swing of things within the past 2 weeks, if not this week. It's like, dust the glove off, baseball tryouts.
Have you seen my glove?
Here we go. Got it. Man, forgot to get cleats. I'll just wear my ones from last year. And so now you're way behind the 8 ball. And it's not just for, this isn't just for the athletes that we're trying to get to go next level if that's our goal. This is for any athlete. Respect the sport, respect the team. Put in the time way ahead of time. What are the things you can do in the off season? And we're structuring that out for a lot of our clients now that we're going to go even more public with. So if anybody needs access to, what does my dancer do in the off season? What should my baseball player be doing? What should my football player, hockey, like soccer, volleyball? Those are the prime sports that we're seeing right now every day in our office. Cheer. Yeah. It's like, well, we never get any time off. It's like, no. As people, we don't get time off, but from each sport, it's like, what if they are a, say, football player? We're going through basketball season. Now we're going into baseball season. So you got a football player who plays baseball. You've got that time in between. What are things that they can be doing, not only during football training that they can relate to their next sport, but what can they do in that gap in between football season and baseball season that they can continue to do during the winter to be prime and ready? You're going to limit injuries when you do that. You're going to have a mental mindset where it's just consistency is key. So you're going to have more drive. You're going to show up more ready mentally. Yeah. But also too, there's going to be a pride that you'll have in yourself saying, man, I put in that work. I was consistent through it. I'm showing up better already than I ever have. And I think that's very, very important for any team or coach to have going into a successful season.
Yeah, and I also think it's important on the coaching side to make sure you're giving grace to these athletes who are coming from multiple things. A lot of the time, the football season, if they make it to playoffs, it overlaps with the next sport. Yeah. And so making sure, like, yes, you, as much as you want your athlete to be like, I want them to love wrestling as much as I do, and I want them to love basketball as much as I do. Just like give them grace that they are coming from another sport. Yeah. And it is okay to give them a second to have that grace, but don't let it be a lenient grace either. If they are signing up for that sport, they are all in. So just remember that, I think.
And here's what I'm doing right now too that's going to help in all of these different dynamics of sport, phase of season, next sport, current sport, is the nutritional side of things, the metabolic side of things looks a lot different depending on, one, what sport you're playing, what position you play, where you're at in the season, your off season, your prep going into tryouts, your there's in-game, during game, pre-game. A lot of people are like, oh, let's carb load. It's like, well, hang on. That only makes sense for certain teams depending on, or is it an anaerobic sport? Is it an aerobic sport? What position do you play? How are we trying to gain? How are we trying to lose, cut, maintain, fuel? There's so many different dynamics that now we're getting asked more to the point that I am taking multiple courses right now. I do have a biochemistry background, a human biology background. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I understand the neurological and physiological states of the body and how it functions. Yeah. And now I'm rehashing that because here's the thing. You don't use it, you lose it. I have a lot of background on the biochemistry side, and here's the muscle memory part.
I was just going to say.
But it's not muscle memory. Well, the brain is a muscle. But I can go back into my brain, and because I have some sort of recollection and education on it.
Yeah.
I am not a biochemist every day. However, you start talking about the Krebs cycle and you start talking about mitochondria and how protein and how the oxidative process of fat, and are we trying to cut? Are we trying to build protein? What's the metabolic ways of sugar to fat to protein? How does the body burn it? Like, I say that and I'm talking over the hilt for a reason, is because that is one of the most common things we're hearing outside of the mental game is, what should they eat?
Yeah.
What should they eat pregame? What should we be feeding them? How do we help them gain weight? We literally just had it this morning. We literally had a client text back, hey, I know you said increase the protein. What else should we be doing? What other exercises can we do?
Right.
And so we're starting to collaborate on that not only can we train any athlete that walks into our door, we are going to be able to fuel them properly, because we can train the hell out of anybody who comes here. You want to put on some muscle, you want to get some biceps, you want to flex your chest, like whatever you do, we can build that.
Yeah.
However, if we don't fuel you properly, you're going to look hella good.
Correct.
But you're not going to perform your best, and you might not be the healthiest. Just because you look healthy and you look beefy or you look, trim, whatever you're shooting for, doesn't mean you're healthy. Metabolically, there's a huge play in there that we're starting to solve for that too. But getting back to the point of that is, where are you at in your season? What's coming next? How do we fuel and treat your body properly from a nutrition perspective?
Yeah, and we talked about this with Dr. Chelsea as well, but you can't wait to brush up on these things before, like a week before. We talked about it with her in the mental toughness aspect and the training that before the season even begins. So you can't like say, oh, tryouts are this week, I'm going to start working out again, I'm going to start going on my runs again, and expect you to have a successful season. Because really, I always think that off season should be for going back to the basics. You should be going back to the things that made you good, brushing up on those things. So then when you get into season and you get into tryouts, it's time to show off a little bit, and you're not focusing on the basics that you maybe have been doing for 4 or 5 years. At this point, you just get to show off, have fun, and score some goals.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate to hear how often we get those questions. However, it's super exciting that we're getting them more. Because the alternative is what? We just stay in the same space. We don't provide resources. We don't ask better questions. We don't get any better answers, and we just go status quo. And then we wonder why athletes are getting injured more, or why they're sicker throughout the year. And it's just not a fun process to be a part of as an athlete or as the parent of an athlete, and having to overcome that and be behind the 8 ball and be reactive instead of creative in the process. So there's a lot of different things and dynamics that we need to go through. But I would say, honestly, the mental game, and right now the nutritional side, the metabolic side, is probably of the most importance.
Yeah, and I think it's also the part that doesn't really get the recognition. There's not a lot of schools or teams that have access to nutritional or metabolic health. A lot of it is put on the physical health, which, yes, the physical health will take you far, but it really will only take you so far if you don't have the metabolic behind you. And it's really easy to say, like, oh, the females between this age and this age, like, are low in iron and they need B12 supplements. But you don't know if that's true for you unless you get blood work done to know that. Because if you are taking these supplements that you don't need, you're just like excreting them out. And you're not doing yourself any service. You're really just
caking the kidneys full of
you're
excess.
Not doing anything. And so don't believe what you see on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and whatever else out there, that you need to be taking these and these supplements because you fall in this age range. Because what isn't in this age range is your name. You're an individual person, and so you need to get what you need to function, not what everyone else does.
And that's where I was going next. You're just all over the. You just what?
One year down.
You're just clairvoyant on me today. No, that is super important to the point that I am actually going to be filming this weekend, it sounds like, with my brother-in-law and potentially my cousin, Brianna, who's a registered dietitian now, which is super cool, trying to get her on board with this. We're going to be recording a nutritional course of sorts. That's a lot of it's going to be free and given away, because you are so right. This is where a lot of people and a lot of these kids are getting their information from. It's like, oh, I need this brand of supplements. I need this, and I got to get this and drink my Ghost pre-workout. It's like, whoa. Because they go through this and they see somebody who looks good or looks hot or whatever. And it's like, man, I want to look like that. And they're basing it on looks. How do I get there? And a lot of that stuff you can find. What are they taking? How are they training? How are they doing that? But they're basing it on look, and they're forgetting the most important variable of it is, like you said, you are you.
Yeah.
You are one of zero.
Yeah.
And that's shout out Alex Hormozy. You are one of zero. So why are you trying to treat yourself as one of a million? Because a million people are trying to do the same things. Respect yourself and be one of one.
Yeah.
And this is where there is some good content out there, but be very critical. And parents, this is for you too. Be very critical of what are they taking. Supplements are not designed to be a replacement.
Right.
They're designed to be an enhancement. So maybe you are low on something. Okay, we need to take some of this. Or maybe you're in this area of a season. We want to exceed this in units for this reason. But to just look good, like anybody can look in the mirror and like what they see. But how are you treating the inside?
Yeah.
And what are you feeding yourself with is super important. And going on the blood work kind of conversation is, what is blood work supposed to show? Here's what we have to stop. And I'm going to be very bold here for a second because I'm sick of hearing it from the heart for good reason. I am sick of hearing, oh yeah, we got blood work done. Everything came back fine. What did the blood work show? Well, they did this CBC, and I've got on my thing. It's like 18 things. It's like 18 things. 18, like 12 to 18 things. Yeah. Really? It's like we have 6.5 pages that we go through.
Yeah.
And more if necessary. So in that course this weekend, we are going to talk about what should blood work look like for your student athlete. And then I've also had parents like, well, you know, I want to do the same thing too. And that looks different for parents.
Right.
And I'm going to be creating a program for the parents too, to be like, look, you want to lose the dad bod a little bit. You have goals too. You want to look such a way. Great. Here's how we do it. Here's what your blood work should show. Oh yeah, they're low on iron, where there's 4 or 5 different things we need to look at regarding iron. Do you know that? Well, it just said they had plenty of it. Well, then why? And we can go through that. So we're going to create resources so you can see exactly what should blood work say. Yeah. And if it says this, where do we go from here? And then we always get the question, be like, oh, okay, cool. Well, at least I know that. But just know there's so many dynamics. Like you're not going to be able to get everything from the resources we're going to put out to pertain to you, because one, you need to get the blood work done. We need to know what to call for, which requires a health history on you or your student athlete, and figure out what should this look like. And we can give direct answers because it's happening. I can give you some great ideas for supplements to use and brands and things like that. However, if you need it, we don't know until we do a proper analysis. And I think more people need to respect that they are one of zero and get the stuff done. And we're working on making it as affordable as possible with so much value that you're going to be, why didn't we do this in the first place?
Yeah, and I think everyone says, like, everyone's stress is relative. Like, you're going to be as stressed as you are right now than you are going to be right now. But it's the same that has to do with your metabolic health, if you will. Like, everyone has to have a different set of needs and wants and things to be a parent or be an athlete that is shown in your metabolic health that I don't think people really know. I mean, it's a huge thing. Everyone puts themselves on vitamin D supplements. Well, we live in Missouri. It's been cloudy and winter until this week. Of course, you're going to be low on vitamin D. It doesn't mean that you need to start taking pills with more than just vitamin D in them. In case you're wondering, look at the label. It's not just vitamin D. There's other things that are in there, and you can get these things, these deficiencies from other places, like you said, by fueling your body, eating certain things, going outside. It's all kinds of things.
Just step outside.
Yeah.
Get outside of the office. Get outside of the basement.
Yeah.
Park farther away. Walk longer to the grocery store. That stuff all matters.
Yeah.
And also, what kind of vitamin D? What's its source? How synthetic is it? Is it mixed with any metals? Is the coating around it, is it supposed to look cool? Is there dyes in it? There's a few different forms of vitamin D. Which form do you need? How can you get vitamin D to also help produce help the consumption of calcium in all the right ways? Like, there's different forms of that. And it's like everybody's like vitamin D3. Great. But what if you don't need that? So now what if you're costing the calcium, you're costing calcium in conversation in a negative way? There's just so much to take into consideration, and an excess of everything is not always the answer. But also going back to, where are you at in season? Your blood work can look such a way preseason where we're going to supplement accordingly. Your blood work could look the same way during season, and we're going to supplement totally differently, knowing what the output, input, and cost and gain of where you're at in your season and your activity levels how that plays a part. If all we're doing is supplementing the same way in preseason as we do through the championship, I'm going to confidently say you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Because your expenditure during the preseason better damn sure be 2x of the activity that you're doing during season. You're like, 2x, what do you mean? It's like, let me go back to that Kobe quote.
Yeah.
Practice is supposed to be harder than the game. Like, you should be putting in more time, more effort, practicing more hours of the day. Where you're in season, you do have practice, you expend all your stuff during the game. It looks different and should be supplemented differently.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just all good things that our spring athletes, our people finishing season, have to really know. Yeah. I mean, some like wrestling state just happened, so they're finishing right now and then going right on to something else. So I think it's just really
a lot of sprinters, a lot of wrestlers, or sprinters or throwers or
discus,
jumpers.
There's so many things.
Track athletes.
Yeah, and if you're not doing anything in the spring, like, get involved in something. I think the probably easiest thing to get involved with is track and field. There's just so many events. There's so many people allowed to participate. And yes, like, you never know. Maybe you're going to try a sport that you're like, I kind of wanted to, and then you're going to end up excelling in it and loving it. And then that's a whole nother opportunity to go to college for a discounted rate. You never know what you're gonna be presented with opportunity wise, so don't knock it till you try it.
Or who you're gonna meet. And, you know, some of these kids that you go to school with, it's like you never knew they were as cool as they were.
Right.
Didn't know their parent was a former professional athlete.
Right.
Didn't know their parent was a lawyer that could come into play. It's like, then relationally, you get to meet all these people a little more in their box, not so much in your box. And at the same time, if you're not passionate about a certain season as a student athlete, and he's like, I really never play baseball, don't really want to, track's not my thing. It's like, okay, well then if you're more of a fall sport person, then find somewhere where you can do some advanced training. And here's the thing, parents, is we always figure out how to come up with the affordability to make sure our kids are doing the things they want and love to do. So with that, it's like, okay, take that money, allocate it towards a specific program. It's like, well, that program's like $2,500 for the summer. It's like, yeah, but you're saving another $2,500 because they're not doing all the things. You're not traveling across 18 states to go play baseball over the summer. It's like, if they're a football and basketball athlete and they don't have that, I mean, summertime you have some of those things, but during that off-season time, figure out a high-intense training quality group where they can go and do those things. Or maybe if we can be a resource and give them tangible goals and things and workouts to where they can get competitive with themselves. I love building competition within ourselves in the right way.
Yeah.
And so if they're not playing a sport in that season, figure out advanced training or ways for them to set goals with themselves.
Yeah, and even like taking the like athlete part out of it, if it's you want to take a season off to start going into internships or college visits, or even like become a manager for a team, just to get experience in other things too, that you're focusing on, prepping for the ACT, getting your grades up, all the things that matter that you have to have also if you want to play anything at the next level, or just play in general in life. You can't have no relationships, you can't have no internships or applications going out to places if you want to go anywhere past high school. Yeah,
no shot. All good things there. Like, this is I mean, you can look across all kinds of different sports, and like I said, we're really just going to drive this home because there's, knowing what I know about certain sports is, it's like, okay, getting back on, we'll just make this, I guess, more about the metabolic side of things. Is one of the things we were supposed to talk about today was, even on the NASCAR side of things, like, obviously it's NASCAR season. You got to talk about dance the whole front half of the year. So now I'm going to steal your thunder. We're going to talk about racing more. But all of these guys that travel, they're in the southeast right now, where it can be a little bit warmer. And so going from Daytona to Atlanta, and nutritionally, if you're sweating a lot, like me racing in the summer, I don't race to the level of those guys at all, not claiming to, but we sure as hell sweat a lot. And a lot of those nutrients that come through the skin, and depending on what sport you're playing, are you indoor, outdoor? Are you in a tight, heavier suit? What's your uniform like? Like, knowing what comes through the body and what's being excreted based on things like that. It's like, nutritionally, how do you fuel yourself for, racing in the Southeast or playing baseball in the Southeast versus how you're going to fuel yourself for playing or racing in the Northeast or are you going to be inside or outside? What's the dynamics like? Are you in curling?
Yeah.
Honestly, all those things matter. But also too on that is the injury side of things. Like some of these guys are in these accidents and things like that in my world right now, in the race world. And, but any athlete across, baseball starting up, basketball's finishing out. And it's like, okay, during injury, how does supplementation, how does nutrition and supplementation, how does food intake and supplementation change based on injury? What kind of injury? Broken leg, concussion, whiplash injury, sprain, strain, where is it at? Headaches, so many different things. Okay, now how do we change the supplementation guide? Knowing what we know, because ideally we have a proper evaluation and blood work done, and we have this incident, and then you have a healthcare professional go through it from that dynamic. And I think more health professionals, it's harder to find health professionals that look and think that way versus, oh, you have this, we need to sit out and do this. And it's just like, 6 to 8 weeks, concussion protocol, blah, blah, blah. But are we really talking about the whole dynamic of how to change the fueling of the body based on that too?
Yeah, I think that kind of goes with like everyone's sport, everyone's position is relative to what they're doing. I mean, I never envy you being in the car. It's like, how hot is it in there?
During the summer, there was a time where it's like 130 degrees.
No.
Like, you're talking, here in the Midwest, it's like, okay, you get into like July, August.
Yeah.
And the heat index is like 110. Yeah. Like they were canceling races last year because it's like 120 degree heat index, which means that car, and depending on if there's no cautions and everything, but if there is, your average race, dare I say, under a half hour. People are like, if we're racing no longer than a half hour. You're talking 140, 50, 60 degrees. Easy.
Yeah.
If you watch NASCAR, a lot of you guys have seen, like, they'll, for entertainment purposes, is they'll put a thermometer on the right side of the headrest because you're in the center of the car, not by the window. They'll put a thermometer by the headrest, and it's not uncommon to see 120, 130 degrees.
Yeah, that's just wild.
And you're just ripping.
Yeah.
And it is great.
Yeah.
And you have no idea until you get out of the car and you're like,
whoa,
adrenaline's
Anyone
gone.
else see those stars?
Is it dark outside?
Yeah.
It's about to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool.
But other than that, there's excited for spring, excited to continue to really forge this thing forward as we, again, just rolling through the pure playbook and giving you guys some of this. I hope some of this is useful. And like I said, this is more to bring perspective and to get the gears churning and maybe qualify us a little bit and being real and helping to somehow be a resource. We've gotten calls from, again, all across the U.S. about, hey, I saw this. This was good. Can you tell me more about this? We're more than happy to do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, too, it's like we are also trying to push everybody to seek out the health professionals that you're looking for based on maybe some of these needs that we're bringing up, and getting yourself into that circle, whether you're in the Northeast or wherever you're at across the world. Even we have people watching in Canada, which is pretty cool. We have people in South America that are watching.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's traveling people, but no matter where you are, finding healthcare professionals that take care of you and your student athletes very specifically, and asking those questions dynamically for them is important. So hopefully we can start to build some of that for you and give you some input on that.
Yeah. It's a good ep.
So after this one, we do have Friday. Yep. Ashton should be coming out if you're listening to this more live, we'll say. But we do, after this one, Ashton's podcast is coming out. This will be round 2 for her. She was on our Vital Wire podcast before. Now she's on the Pure Playbook, and I've landed another couple podcast guests, which is super fun.
Yeah.
We might be talking more with softball and soccer, and so very excited for that. We also have an event of sorts that we will be releasing soon.
Yeah.
Very excited about that. It won't be the only sport that we do this for. So I think a lot of people are going to be excited. And if you're not a part of the sport that we're doing this for, just know that your sport is coming. We have a lot of relationships with a lot of cool people that are attaching to what we're doing for the student athlete community. And we're very grateful and blessed to have them jump on board and give us good feedback. So we want to share that with you guys across all of sports. Yeah. So anything else?
No.
Sam, you got anything over there? Producer Sam? We got a Producer Sam segment question.
Hi, friends. How's it going? No, I love listening to you guys talk. Really. Like, there are so many things that I don't know, not coming from a healthcare background. So it's really cool to like sit and listen to you guys speak on that. I did have a question for you guys though.
Uh-oh.
So you guys were talking about.
See ya. No, just kidding.
Perfect. I was like, okay, I get it. That makes sense.
No, just kidding.
But you guys were talking about, having like cross training and making sure that these student athletes who are doing football and baseball or swim and volleyball, like do we have people on staff like in schools that are making sure that they are being cross trained, or are we just having them strictly for football, strictly for swim? And is that something that we can help push into schools and make sure that people know that it's important, not just for one, but for all?
Yeah, I think right now it's really just up to the parents and the athlete to do it themselves. I mean, some higher schools might have people who are in charge of that, but I've never heard of them. Yeah. They might even have strength conditioning coaches. A lot of schools don't. So really it's up to the parents and the athletes, which is why we're pushing so hard on just the awareness and acknowledgement of the need of these things to be happening.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I'm not going to say there's not schools that do that or there's not faculty that's aware of that. I would say it's probably slim, but I don't think it's malicious. I would say sometimes there's a lot of us coaches that get super like, oh, it's baseball season, we're training for baseball. I think I would confidently say no matter what sport we're in or strength coaches or whatever it is build for whatever sport you're coaching that through, you're lifting for. I would say build that out, how you want that to go, and then take at least one day and get rid of it. And let a different strength coach or put your head, if you are the strength coach across all of those programs, get one of those days for football and toss it out. And now you're going to train like a baseball player. We're going to lift according to this. Or make football players train like dancers. It's like, holy cow, there is so much advantageous effect of that people have no idea. And it's counterintuitive, right? But I think you are onto something. And what we've always said, and Sam's heard us say this, and it's something we're pushing a lot, is even for like the pure athlete evaluation that we've come up with, that we put all of our athletes through to figure out where they're at, but how we can build them better,
right? Is
we are in no way trying to take or step into that that area of strength training and tell you how to do your job, or we know better. It's not it at all. We just want to provide more data and more opportunity to think about things a little differently and hopefully provoke let's literally cross-train these athletes. Football needs to be football, but if we take 20% of that and make it super dynamic within another area or sport, I would 100% guarantee you it's going to be advantageous to those athletes.
Yeah.
So not trying to replace, but if there's anything we can do to help, we would love to have that conversation. I'll be talking with a coach here in the next week or so who's also a strength and conditioning coach, where I'm going to dive into that and be like, look, is there anything I can help you with? Or is there any questions you have? We all have questions. If you think you know everything, you'll never learn anything.
Yeah. And
so the best coaches, no matter what, strength training, head coaches, whoever, are going to at least be open, filter it, but they're willing to learn something and have those conversations where, we just want to help because we do have a different unbiased perspective, all in efforts to build athletes better and take care of them and properly train them and just make them better athletes and better people.
Yeah.
How was that for a long-winded response?
I enjoyed that. I just wanted the people to hear. I wanted the people to hear that.
She's like, I knew what you were going to say.
I did. I just wanted to, it was important for people to hear that.
Yeah. So super excited for that. Anything else?
No.
ATE?
No.
No? All right. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of The Pure Playbook. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, wherever you are at in it and wherever you are listening to us.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. Hope to see you soon. See ya.